Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Top Tips from Galaxy Australia. These sessions are designed to help save you time, streamline your data analyses, and make it easier to get your research done. Today, we're joined by Dr. Anna Syme. She's a senior bioinformatician in the Galaxy team. She has a PhD in evolutionary biology and now works developing genomics workflows for scientists to use in the Galaxy platform. And today, Anna is going to share all her top tips for automating your data analyses using these aforementioned workflows. So I'll hand straight over to you, Anna.
Thanks, Pat. Okay, so yes, today I'm going to show you a few different ways to create and use workflows in Galaxy, because these can be a really good way to save a lot of time. So we're just going to dive straight in. Firstly, we're going to create a workflow, going to the activity bar here in the left-hand side, going to workflows and create. And this is going to bring up what we call a workflow canvas, which is like a big sheet of paper. We will give our workflow a name. And then we're going to put things into it. So let's start with our input data. And this might be our DNA reads. And then we want to put a tool into our workflow. So let's put in a quality control tool. I'm just searching for that in the tools panel. And when I find it, I click on it and it puts it into the workflow. And then I join my input data set into this tool. And I'm going to leave all the settings in the tool as defaults for now. Save the workflow. And this is a really simple one just to start with. So we'll go back to our home screen by clicking on the home button. And I've already got a file here in my history, which is some DNA reads that we're going to use in the workflow. So to run the workflow, we go back to the workflows button and we can see our workflow here at the top. And we click on the run button. We just check it's got the right input and run. So that's running now. What this has actually brought up in the middle is a really nice screen. This is a new feature in Galaxy. This is the workflow invocation screen. So it's showing us the diagram of our workflow here, which is quite simple, just the reads going into the tool. It's showing us the tool running, and it's also showing us that the tool's finished now. We can click on the results here in the history, and we can see the tool has run, and that's good. So let's add some things to our workflow. Going back to find the workflow here, click on workflows, find our workflow, click on edit. So let's add a tool to filter out the reads that are a low quality. So we do have a tool we can use called filter by quality. And I'm going to click on that tool, put it here into the workflow. We want the reads to go into this tool. And we're going to change a setting in here. So over at the right-hand side, the quality cutoff value, the default is 20. We're going to make it quite high. We're going to make it 35. And we'll just make sure we've saved that. And then let's add another FastQC step after this, just to see what happened after our filtering. So let's take the reads from here and put them into this second FastQ step. So we've added this to our workflow. We can do a couple more things to make this a bit easier to use. We can add some frames. So there's a frame comment option here, which is basically you can add boxes and annotate your workflow a bit more, just so it's easier to see what's happening, particularly if other people are going to be using it and they don't know what's in this workflow. So let's make that a bit bigger. So why don't I add in just a bit of a heading here and this FastQC on raw reads. And we can add a second frame here. Let's just add it around our second FastQ. Oops. And add another heading. So this is our FastQC on filtered reads. So just to make it really clear what's going on in the workflow. So they're frames that we've added. We can also put some tags on our outputs. So thinking about how these output files will appear in our history when the workflow runs, we want to make sure we can see them. So let's click on this first FastQC tool, scroll right to the bottom to find the output. The HTML file is the one we look at. And let's give it a tag and we'll call it FastQC raw reads. So you can give them whatever name you want here in the tagging. Let's make that box a bit bigger. And we'll do the same here for the second set of FastQ reads. Give that a tag, FastQC, on our filtered reads. Okay, so we can tag 2 of our outputs. Another thing we can do is hide some outputs by clicking this eye icon. So we'd actually want to look at these text files, we've decided. So let's just move them out of our history. And one other thing we can do is thinking downstream what we might want to do with these output files. These filtered reads here, we're going to tick the box next to them just to make sure that if we ever run this workflow with other workflows, that output is available. So save. Okay, and one last thing is I think it's always good to give your workflow a bit of information in the annotation box. So I normally put in this box the inputs, the tools that we used, settings that we changed from the defaults, and the outputs, and anything else that you think is useful there. So I won't fill that all in here, but just as an example there. Okay, we've saved our workflow. Let's go back to the home screen. And let's run this workflow now. That's a bit more complicated. Data analysis, run with bacterial DNA. And let's run that. So again, we can see here in the workflow invocation, it's giving us our diagram of the workflow. It's showing us the jobs as they've started, they're orange. So both FastQC and filtering is happening. And then the second FastQC will start. And we can also see over here in the history, the tagging that we added. So it makes the files much easier to find. And so that all seems to be working well. Our main 2 outputs are the FastQ on the filter reads and the FastQ on the raw reads. So we won't go into the detail of what it actually did, but the main point is it ran all of the tools we wanted it to run. You might want to share this workflow with a colleague. So you can do that by going to workflows again, finding the workflow, clicking on share, clicking to make it accessible, and it brings up this URL that you can share with people. And I'll show you what that looks like. I'll open this in a new tab. So this will show people the workflow diagram, and it will also show here in the description anything you put in that annotation box. So I think it's really useful to fill in that box with all the detail. So back to our main screen here. Okay, so we created this workflow by filling it in on the canvas, but another way we can create a workflow is actually from a history where we've run various tools and got various outputs. So we've got our history here. So what we do is go to the top right, extract workflow. One thing we need to do is take out the things that we don't want in the workflow. So we can either do that by deleting them first in the history, or we can exclude them here in the workflow creation. So that first step of FastQC, we don't need that. We're just running the second steps. So create workflow and click edit. Just check that all looks okay. I think it's got the right FastQC that we are hoping it to have. Okay, so that looks correct. It's got the first FastQC on the raw reads, the filtering, and the second FastQC. We'll save that. And so that's created a workflow just purely from what we did in our history. So that can be a really good way to even record what you've done. If you've done something quite complicated, got a lot of different tools, a lot of different settings, a quick and easy way to save what you did is to create that workflow from the history, and then it will preserve all of that information. You can go and look at the workflow itself back on the canvas, and it just makes it really easy to see what you did and record what you did. Okay, so that's two ways to create workflows, but another way we can get workflows in is by importing them. So we can go to workflows, over on the right, public workflows, and we can just import any workflow we want from here. So I'm going to search for this one for nanopore pre-processing. We click import. And then once we go back to my workflows, we'll see it here at the top. It's imported it. It's a copy of it, which means it's yours to edit and change as you want. So I really encourage that, because a lot of workflows might have the backbone that you want, but you might want to change particular parts of them to be more suitable for your research. So let's have a look at this. We can click on the edit button. This is actually quite a nice workflow. It's really well laid out. It's got lots of nice formatting. You can see here it's got the frames. They're all color coordinated, and this is quite a complex workflow. So lots going on here, but this might be an example. You might want to use this sort of workflow, but you might want to change one of the tools in it or more, or some of the settings. So you might go to a tool like this and say, I don't want this tool, delete that, and add in another tool that's more appropriate for you. And then you can save, and then your copy of the workflow is now different, and you can use it as you need it. So that's the summary then of using workflows in Galaxy. So you can create them from the canvas, you can create them from your history, and you can import them. And really good to remember that you can change them. So you can always import one that you like most of it, and you can change it as you need it.
Fantastic. Thanks for that awesome overview, Anna. And some really great ways to use workflows to get your data analysis done in Galaxy. So we have some questions for you. So say you've made your workflow and you are ready to run it, and so you've clicked run work, you've clicked on the workflow and you're about to run it, but then you suddenly remember, oh, I need to change a setting at the last second. Do you have to go all the way back to editing the workflow?
No, you don't have to. You could, but an easier way, I'll show you an example. So let's look at our original workflow here. We'll click it to run it. So there's this button here which is expand to full workflow form, which shows you all of the tools and settings in that workflow. So in this case, we just make sure we had our right input. And say we wanted to change the quality score for filtering, we'd go to this little pencil icon, and we could change that to whatever we wanted it to be. And then we can just run the workflow like that with any changes.
Great. It's nice not to have to go back. So you mentioned at one point that you can chain some workflows together. Do you think you could quickly show us how to do that?
Yes, I could. So let's just create a new one. Just go to the blank canvas. And yes, so from here you can join any workflows together, and then they become what are called sub workflows. So if I scroll down all the way to the bottom, it'll show me all of my workflows, and so I can use any of those. So let's say we had our workflow that we had data analysis. So we'll put that in. You can see it's compressed it all into a single box, but it's got room for an input, and it's got the output, which was actually the filtered reads from that filtering setting. So we would add this part of the workflow. We would still need to add an input and join that in here. And then say we wanted to do something with that output, those filtered reads, we might want to do some genome assembly or something like that. If we had another workflow, we could probably put in something like this. This might not be the real case example, but just as an example, we would put our filtered reads into that next sub workflow. And then we've joined two workflows together. So each of those are a workflow on their own, but yeah, you have this ability to join lots of things together. And it can also make it a little bit easier to see what's going on, because workflows obviously can get very complicated. So being able to put them in this sort of modular form is a nice way to work with the workflows.
Yeah, exactly. You can break it down into each individual task as a sub workflow. That's awesome. So one other question of when you're running your workflow, will it always send the output to your current history, or can you set it to send somewhere else?
Yeah, you can set it to go somewhere else. So let's show that example again with the data analysis. Again, you want to click on this expand to full workflow form button. And at the top, you can see it's brought up this option to send results to a new history. And so if I click yes, you can give that history a name. So say you made particular changes to this workflow, or we're going to run it with particular settings. It's a nice way to capture it in its own history to keep your Galaxy organized, rather than just running everything in the same history and then all the files propagate on top of the other files, and you might not know where one workflow started and finished. So this is a nice way to keep those workflow runs in separate histories. So yeah, all you have to do is send results to a new history, and just to always check the inputs are correct and run, and then it will create a new history and run the workflow in there.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Anna. We'll leave it there for today. Thank you, Anna, again for your demonstration, and thank you for the questions. Remember, you can always ask for help by submitting a help ticket, so under the help menu and then support. And you can also email the team for support at help@genome.edu.au.